Hello and welcome to Tomlin's Harmonica podcast, where I'll be hanging out with players and teachers and having conversations loosely based around harmonica. Today I'm really pleased to be joined by a harmonica player who's taken his love of hard rock guitar and blended it with classic harp playing to create a style that's led him to being described as the Hendrix of the harmonica. Let me introduce you to the one and only Wilde. Thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Glad to be here.
So yeah, for a little bit of context, this is in the middle of the COVID-19 lockdown. So I was chatting to Todd Parrott a couple of months ago, and he was super excited about you coming over to the States for the Carolina Harp Fest, which is supposed to be on now, isn't it?
Yeah, I was supposed to be there right now. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, obviously they stopped all the flights going into the US, so we're going to postpone that festival and do it sometime later in the year.
So
after it's all blown over.
So do you think it's going to be this year that they're going to do it, or postpone until next year?
I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember what he said now. I've had so many gigs and festivals rescheduled, or talking about rescheduling, but nobody really knows what's going to happen yet, do they? So
it's totally nuts.
It'll be the end of this year.
Yeah.
Or maybe even this summer, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, like, what's it like? Because you're down in Brighton, aren't you?
Yeah.
What's it like down there?
I mean, I don't know anyone that's got it or had it yet. It's still pretty busy, actually, despite this lockdown. Like, I went for a bike ride the other day down the seafront, and the promenade and the cycle path on the seafront were probably like the busiest I've ever seen them.
Yeah.
Because obviously you're only allowed out to exercise, so everyone's just going for a bike ride or a run or a walk like all day long.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because like I think a lot of people might be listening to this in the States, but basically we've been told by our government that we're all supposed to go out for a run every day, and that's it. And so like when you go outside, it's really busy, which is really weird because we're also trying to self-isolate and all this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are taking up running and cycling that didn't do it before,
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, everyone just sat inside on their phones before.
Yeah.
Now they're out jogging around.
But you must be going nuts because like normally you'd be at the gym like lifting weights and shit.
Yeah, I mean I've got dumbbells and barbells and things here, so I can do home workouts, but it's quite nice in a way. Just having a bit of downtime to work on vocals, work on songwriting, finish recording this album that I've been making. I have a small studio just up the road from here, so I can still be getting on with that. Yeah, it's a shame that all the gigs have been cancelled, but aside from that, it's quite nice having time to be creative.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm finding that as well. I've got all of my kind of non-musician friends are calling me up, being like, "What do we do? What do we do when we're at home?" And like, well, I'm doing what I always do. I'm practicing and I'm writing stuff and I'm teaching, and like it's kind of business as usual, apart from not leaving the flat quite so much.
Yeah.
But it's actually it's weird. Like I think that there's going to be this massive jump in musicians playing standard like over the next 6 months because like, everyone's at home woodshedding at the moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Everyone's going to come back like a progressive jazz artist.
Yeah, totally. Like that'll be the thing. Like, so are you shedding your chops, or are you just mainly writing and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, anytime I have to practice these days are spent on vocals and writing. I don't really sit down and practice harp that much. The main times I play harp are in the studio when we're writing and recording, or live and when I'm teaching. But I don't tend to practice like day to day. I go through phases. Every year or two, I might have a week where I get really into like practicing a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't have a practice routine on the harp. I just play, whenever I feel like it. So
no, that's fair. I think it's I struggle with this, like with teaching, and like I'm kind of telling students to practice a certain amount, and practice daily and all this kind of thing. And then like there have been huge chunks of the last 5 or 6 years where I haven't really been practicing. Like I've been playing a lot, but kind of sitting down and taking some time out to practice isn't really something that I think about doing. I mean, at the moment, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm working on some stuff that I've not worked on before. So like I've had a chromatic harmonica sitting just staring at me, being like, hey, you don't know how to play me. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that another time.
Yeah, that's another can of worms, that.
Yeah.
But it's something you can just keep coming back to. And the good thing about music is there's infinite things you could learn. Even if you become the best at doing one thing, you won't be the best at doing another thing and another thing. So there's always something you can learn from someone else, or from another style, or inspiration you can find somewhere. So
no doubt. Do you not find, so like you had this you thought you'd be going over to the States for this workshop? Do you not find when you got events like that coming up that you start thinking a little bit more about your playing, and you kind of shed a little bit, especially when there are people like Todd there, because he's a bit of a beast.
He is, but we're completely different players. I really respect him for the stuff he does. There's plenty of stuff he does that I can't do, and there's probably a lot of stuff I do that he can't do.
Oh, definitely.
So it's just different players. We have a lot of respect for each other. But no, I don't really worry about that too much.
That's cool. I was watching a video of you at Spa jamming with Jason Ricci, and I was just trying to imagine like how I would feel in that scenario where he's just like, Will Wilde, go, and I'm like,
right.
what do you do?
I don't know. Actually, I remember that jam. And I'd had quite a few beers before that.
Right.
To the point where I don't know if any of you get this, where if you drink a lot of alcohol, beer especially, your mouth dries up.
Yeah.
And almost to the point where like your lips are sticking to your gums.
Oh no. That's a lot of beer, dude.
It's really not good. So yeah, especially if you've got Jason or someone like that sat next to you as well. But I think it was all right.
No, it sounded killer. It's just it's one of those things like when you kind of when I think of like fun things that I'd like to do, on my bucket list. Like I would love to sit down with Jason, but then I would also have the fear at the same time.
Right. Yeah. It's good. Like you just find playing with people of that level, and at Spa there's obviously a lot of pro players from all around the world, that are all experts in their field of harmonica. So it's just inspiring, and if you have to follow someone like that, it just kind of forces you to, do something good.
Yeah, no,
It's like
absolutely.
if you're following someone who's crap, then it doesn't really matter. You just knock out a solo. But if if you're next to someone that's sort of world class, then you better do something world class to follow it. That's the way I look at it.
No, that's so true. It's I don't know, I think it's like anything. Like if you play like sports or whatever, you don't get a good game out of yourself if you're playing against someone who isn't better than you.
That's it. Yeah, yeah. The best way, and I'm not just talking about other harmonica players, but I know for myself, um, the main way I got better as a musician was playing with other players who were better than me. Um, yeah, I've always had good guitar players in my band. And I've said before that that's where I think my style comes from, really, having fast, fairly technical um, rock blues players in the band, and then having to just match their intensity.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and playing with good rhythm section really helps as well. I still find if you're playing with a rhythm section that's not got a great groove, it can be really hard to. You really have to dig deep to find something to play when you're soloing, and that's when you tend to churn out your stock licks. But if you've got a great groove going on, it's like the instrument plays itself almost.
It's so true. I remember doing a gig years and years ago with like a band that I'd never played with before. It was one of these kind of weird bands that had been put together to back up a singer, and like we got on stage and started playing, and the drummer was really shaky, but it was okay. And then the singer gave me the nod to take a solo. I was playing guitar, and I took the solo and very quickly realized that I shouldn't have taken a solo at all, because like I was kind of keeping everything solid rhythmically.
Okay.
And
Right,
when I
right.
came back, the drummer was somewhere else, very, very different tempo, different feel. I was like, oh God, that was a big mistake. And yeah, having a really solid rhythm section, it changes everything. It like they don't get any of the praise, but they make life so much easier for the person who gets all of the limelight.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Oh man. So like I remember you telling me this story, and I was trying to remember it correctly, but when you did Parisian Walkways,
Mm.
did you know Gary Moore before that? Was that something that you were planning on doing with him?
No, not exactly. No.
So what's the story? Tell
I
us the
kind of encountered him on a couple of occasions. Um, the first time I was about 18 or 19, and my band was playing in a tiny little pub in Brighton called the Ranelagh in Kemp Town. And that was Gary's local because he lived in Brighton. And he knew the owners of that place, and occasionally he'd come down and do a gig there, but they wouldn't announce it because you can only fit about like 50 people in, and it's grand wall to wall. So this night that my band were playing, he was there. He kind of walked in halfway through the set, and we weren't that good back then, really. And a friend of mine was standing at the bar, and someone said to Gary, who was at the bar too, like, "Oh, what do you think? These guys are pretty good, right?" And he just went, I'll show him how it's done." And he got up a bit later and played, which was really cool. But yeah, I saw him again at a festival somewhere in the north of England when I was playing with my sister's band, and he really liked my sister and the version she did of what's that song called? Rather Go Blind. And he told her that if she recorded that song on an album, that he would come in and play guitar on it. And she messaged him and tried to sort it out, and it sort of didn't happen in time, and he died not long afterwards. So yeah, he never got to hear my version of his song. I like to think that he would approve if he could hear it, but yeah.
There is absolutely no doubt that he would approve. It's a ridiculously cool version, and I'm going to put that in the show. I'm sure everyone's heard it, but I'm going to put it in the show notes just in case, because it's a ridiculous cover. I really enjoy it, and also watching Will play it live. I think you do it in the video as well, but he switches between harmonicas. Do you have like a magnet holding them together?
Yeah, there's like a thin strip of magnet between the two harps. It's just kind of the easiest way I found of holding two together, and it puts a little bit of space in between them, so you can still get a good pucker on each one.
But so what were you doing? What keys were you playing, and like what was the switch for?
So it's an A minor natural minor tuned harp, played in second.
Okay.
So basically that's a D harp with the thirds flattened on it.
Okay.
And the other harp is a standard C in fourth position. So I'm playing Aeolian mode on the C.
Okay.
And I'm playing the natural minor harp in second. The reason for having two is you can play the whole song on one or the other, right? All the notes are there on both harps. The reason for having two is just to do with the way that each phrase lays out. So I play one phrase on one and then one phrase on the other. I wanted to get as many of the big sort of expressive draw notes, or the big expressive notes to be draw notes, right? So that they're bendable and you can get more vibrato on them. And also it's to do with where the double stops, how the double stops lay out too. I'll show you on a harp, it's the easiest way. So that's a single note.
Okay.
And that's a double stop. So yeah, so basically I just chose which harp was gonna sound best for each phrase. I quite often use more than one harp in a song.
It's nuts. Like I struggle so much with switching harmonicas, because I'll quite often be doing something like when I play Superstition, I'll play like most of the tune on a G harp in second to kind of get the low down chugging rhythm stuff, and then I'll solo in third on a C harp, just so that it cuts through a little bit more, because G doesn't really cut through quite the same way with a band. And it's that thing of like trying to switch and not look like a complete idiot while you're doing it. It's such a nuisance. It's just something you have to practice, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah, you get used to it after a while. I mean, I've been doing that for like nearly 10 years now, so it's quite natural. But if there's a song, I try and limit it to two harps per song. Any more than that, and then it does start to get kind of awkward. Yeah, on a record, I might use more than that on a song. And so some people kind of see it as sort of cheating or something, if you choose to switch harps just to play a phrase or a note. And it's not really. It's just about what's going to sound the best,
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing to remember about harmonica. Full stop. Well, yeah.
Sound. It's not about something being difficult to do necessarily. I'd rather play something an easy way that sounds really good to the ear than do something really technical that sounds like crap.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I remember I had this student who came in years ago, and he had taught himself to overblow and overdraw, and had learnt all of the like all 12 positions on a C harmonica, and
Cool. Yeah,
could
yeah,
could play in any key,
yeah,
but none of the notes sounded nice. And
yeah.
it was really difficult, and that doesn't mean that you can't make it sound nice, because I mean Howard Levy does a great job, and there are plenty of other players who can nail that kind of overblow overdraw thing. But I think sometimes, like, the more players that I talk to about it, the more I realize that even people who can overblow and overdraw will still play harmonicas that are tuned, like country tuned, to get that major seventh because it sounds better, and it just makes sense. You've got to service the music rather than anything else, and if it sounds sweeter a certain way, then do it that way.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, I got country tuned harp here. If you were playing that major seven, you couldn't get that kind of tone and vibrato on an overblow. No matter how good you are at overblowing, it won't be as pure and resonant a sound as that. So I think it's definitely worth learning to get all the overblows and overdraws, and learning to play chromatically, because it improves your understanding of theory and the instrument generally. And there are times when you kind of have to overblow or overdraw to access certain notes. But I prefer to use various tunings to get those notes where possible, because I just think it sounds better most of the time.
Yeah. And you've this is a great point to chat about something that you've developed, which is your own tuning, which kind of, I think, well, from my perspective, it fixes the whole issue of needing to hit that 6 overblow if you want to get the minor third. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your tuning and the thinking behind it?
So it's the concept is very similar to some of Brendan Power's tunings, if you're familiar with them, in that all of the draw notes are able to bend from 1 to 10. On a standard harp, you can't bend the draw notes in holes 7 to 10. So my tuning, holes 1 to 5 are exactly the same as standard, so you don't lose anything there. Hole 6 has been changed so that when you're playing in second position, your root note, which would have been below 6, is now a draw note, and it behaves exactly the same as hole 2. So you can get a nice vibrato on it, and you can bend it a full tone down to a flat 7. So that's kind of one thing that I was trying to address with this. Guitar players are always bending their B string up to that note, and we can't really do that because we've got that note as below 6, which doesn't bend, so it just kind of sounds a bit flat. So above hole 6, I've made it so all of the draw notes there can bend as well. So holes 6, 7, and 8 are basically the same as holes 2, 3, and 4. So you can get your minor third as just a half step bend in hole 7, just like you would in hole 3. And you can get your flat 5 as a half step bend in hole 8, just like you do in hole 4. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And then hole 9 is like hole 2 again. Hole 10 is an idea that I got from Brendan Power that I really liked, which is basically switching the blow and the draw reed around in hole 10. So that kind of whammer jammer blow bend becomes a draw bend now.
Nice. And so do you find that you predominantly use that tuning, or is it just for specific tunes, specific songs?
If I'm playing straight blues, which I don't really anymore in my band, then I'll usually use standard. In the current set with my band, it's like 80 or 90% my tuning and the rest on standard.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly for the rock stuff, it's just as I started writing more rock material and less 12-bar blues, I actually ended up playing guitar on on a lot of the new tracks I was writing because the harp just didn't have the intensity to it that I wanted, and that was one of the things that led me to develop this tuning. And now I don't play any guitar live anymore. I just play harp. But yeah, I do a lot of that kind of high-end, squealy guitar-like stuff.
And do you run it through effects and stuff?
On the record we've been making, which is long overdue, by the way. I haven't put out an album for ages, and the last album was a covers album, so we're really due a new original record.
Yeah.
But yeah, on this new one, I've been using quite a lot of effects. The amp I've been using is a Mesa Boogie Mark IV, which isn't a typical harp amp at all. I don't think I know of anyone that uses one. So that's like a dual rectifier amp. It's quite high gain. I'm
just going to interrupt very briefly, just for harmonica players that don't play guitar. This is kind of traditionally like quite a kind of hard rock, heavy metal sounding amp for guitar. So does it give you that hard rock? Does it give you that kind of tone on harmonica?
Yeah, I mean, you have to play to the sound. Mm-hmm. If you went and played like Little Walter style tongue block shuffle stuff through it, it just sound terrible. But if you're playing in that style, then it really works. So yeah, I've been using the Mesa with a low impedance SM58, which again is kind of the opposite of what the traditional harp thing is. So usually for like Chicago blues, we'd use a high impedance mic and a fairly low gain amp and use the mic to push the amp. But I'm using a low impedance mic and then using the gain on the amp to get the breakup and the distortion. So it's a more kind of compressed, smoother distortion than you would get with a Fender or something. Yeah, as far as effects, there's always a bit of reverb and delay in my sound. I've been using like a wah pedal, Crybaby wah.
Nice.
Univibe. We used a ring modulator, which is crazy sound. A track called "Take the Best of Me." I'm sure I've used other stuff on this record. I can't think right now, but yeah, it's just to add a bit of something. It's not like the effect is the sound. Live, I'm still playing through a Fender at the moment, just with reverb. Partly because you can get into feedback issues using my studio setup live on stage, and partly just out of laziness, not wanting to set up a massive rig with loads of pedals. But yeah.
That's the thing that's really funny when you kind of you look at sort of the practicalities of doing like pro touring and stuff versus like the hobby musician, and like when the hobby musician sees the pros rig and they're like, why don't you have loads and loads of stuff? It's like, so I don't have to carry it every time and set it up every time.
Yeah. I went through a phase of using a Fractal Audio Axe Effects, which is, for anyone that doesn't know, it's kind of like a Kemper or like a Line 6 Helix kind of thing. but really
like
high end.
Sort of digital modeling
Digital
of
modeling, yeah. So
effects and amps and stuff.
Computer really, and it's obviously it's for guitar, but it's got just about every amp inside of it that you can imagine, all the Fenders, all the Marshalls, everything. It's got about 50 different overdrive pedals in it, and every effect you could ever want. And that's actually what I used on Parisian. It's not a real amp on that. It's a simulation, but they sound and respond just the same as the real thing, pretty much. I think I was modeling a Marshall 1959 SLP on that.
Nice.
Which I think is the amp that might be the amp that Gary Moore used for guitar, actually. But
it sounds like the kind of thing he would use, definitely. Did you find that your audience were receptive when you kind of moved away from the bluesy stuff and more towards the rocky stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a gradual transition, which hasn't really finished yet. Anyone that's seen us live in the past sort of 6 months will have witnessed the new, the rebirth of the band. But there's nothing out on record yet that's, representative of what I do now, at all. Yeah, so the covers album that we did, that was a few years ago now, it's still, I'd still call it a blues rock record, really. Mm-hmm. Whereas the one we're making right now is just a hard rock record. Yeah.
But it's interesting though, because you say it's blues rock, and yeah, I would agree, but it's a style of blues playing that doesn't traditionally feature harmonica.
Yeah, that was the main idea behind that record, actually. To let you in on a secret, the reason I made that covers album, I can say it now, was just to get out of a record deal that I was trapped in. I had to do one more album to fulfill the contract, and I didn't want to give them any more originals because I kind of knew they would be wasted on that label. So we did a covers record. But the idea was to do a bunch of songs that would kind of push the boundaries with the harp a bit, stuff that you wouldn't expect to hear harp on. Mm-hmm. Or some of them are songs that have harp in the original, like Lazy. Gillan played a bit of harp in the original, but I took all of Ritchie Blackmore's guitar lines and sort of translated those to harp. So it was quite fun trying to find 10 or 12 songs that would translate well to harp, that you wouldn't expect to hear.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've kind of gone through a kind of opposite move with my playing, right. Where like I kind of, because I came to harmonica from guitar first. Did you play guitar before harmonica?
I was a drummer.
You were a drummer? Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about that. But yeah, so like I started with guitar. And then I had to stop playing guitar because I got tendonitis in my wrists. So right. I started playing harmonica, and all I wanted to do was play guitar stuff on harmonica. So right. I didn't learn any of the traditional harmonica stuff for years and years, and I got really sucked into doing the overblow playing and all that kind of stuff. And only recently, over the last kind of 2-3 years, I've kind of gotten heavily into like the tom blocking thing, the really traditional blues harmonica stuff. And anytime that I want to do like guitar stuff, I'm now gradually coming back to guitar for it, and right. kind of playing both instruments. And I'm kind of jealous that you've made it work on harmonica, that you've put that time and effort in, and you can now do all the guitar stuff on it, because it sounds brilliant.
Thanks. Cheers. Yeah, I mean, I had quite like going way back. I had quite a guitar-y sound from the beginning, by accident, like kind of trying to copy sort of Sonny Boy and old bluesy stuff. But when I was learning, I think I was 16 or 17, and we didn't. I don't know if we had YouTube back then, but if we did, I wasn't really aware of it or using it. I think it was still dial up, so it probably
Back in the old days.
But yeah, I kind of heard that you're supposed to have a valve amp, and I couldn't afford a proper valve amp, so I had a solid state amp with a valve in the preamp, which had more of a kind of shreddy guitar like sound. And I was using a low impedance mic back then too. I wasn't aware that tongue blocking was a thing, so I puckered. And yeah, the sound I've gone back to recently is kind of similar to that earlier sound that that I had, you know. Obviously, in between, I went and learnt the more traditional way of playing and traditional way of setting up a rig and that. But yeah,
I think it's good to have all these skills, and then that's how you can develop your own thing. And I think you really have developed your own sound, which is something that can be quite lacking in the harmonica community.
yeah,
We sometimes look at a lot of the old stuff, like the kind of pre 1970 harmonica players, and that's what we want to sound like.
yeah, for sure. I mean, most blues players, as soon as you listen to them, kind of fall into one of 3 or 4 schools, really. They're either kind of Little Walter style, Sonny Boy style, George Harmonica Smith style, or maybe like Sonny Terry style. To my ear, at least, anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of just lots of variations on one of those themes. And that's another reason why I've decided just not to play 12-bar blues anymore, because every harmonica player, pretty much for the last 70 years, has just played that material.
Yeah.
You know, and it's one song. Charlie Musselwhite said it. You know, it's he said, I really only play one song. He goes, sometimes I play it fast, sometimes I play it slow, but it's all just one song. And it is really, I mean, it's all one progression. So if you're playing the same instrument as everyone else, always over the same, more or less the same chord progression as everyone else, that everyone has been doing for decades, it's going to be very, very difficult to come up with your own sound over that, you know, unless you just do something way outside of the box over the top of it. So in the last kind of year, 2 years, my interest has just been in songwriting. Yeah, just writing songs, and then the harp is usually the last thing to go on.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So when you're writing the songs, do you generally write with a guitar for kind of chord progressions? Like, what's the process?
Yeah. Well, I've kind of tried different processes. The one that seems to work the most for me at the moment, I have 2 writing partners. I have Sarah Starbuck, who I write lyrics with. She's not a musician at all. She's an author and a writer, but obviously she's good with words. So she'll write poetry, essentially, on a theme. And then I'll take that and usually change it or add to it and move things around, and sit down with a guitar and come up with a song. And then I'll take that to our guitar player, Steve, and kind of finish the songwriting process with him. So refining it, he might add in sections or change some of the chords, and yeah, we kind of produce it that way. So
That's cool.
yeah, and that's the process I'm most interested in. Really, is the creative process rather than the sort of imitating other people process.
That's fair. That's fair. I think okay. So you've been chatting about this new album. Do you know
Yeah.
when it's going to be out?
Oh my God, I know. Would probably have been out already, but as you probably heard, I broke my neck last summer. Last June, I broke my neck and my back in a motorbike crash. So, but yeah, I was out of action for most of last year. And then this year has been relatively quiet so far on the gig front. It was about to get really busy this month. I had Italy and America lined up, and then we've got a load more dates coming up. And then this coronavirus thing's happened and kind of stamped all of that out. So, yeah, this is like it could be my second summer shut indoors. So I'm just going to use this time now to finally get this record finished, But it's been a learning curve, new way of writing, co-writing with other people, because I always wrote all of it myself up till now, and yeah, just writing in a different genre essentially, and yeah. But if it was up to me, I would probably go and erase all my previous albums from Spotify and YouTube and everything, and just start again with this one because, yeah, it's as far as I'm concerned, it's a much higher standard than the previous work.
But I'm sure it's going to be awesome. But I think people really like to like when they like an artist, they like to see the progression, and they like to see where things started. And people are going to discover you through the new album, and then they're going to go back and be like, "Whoa, look like what he sounded like back in the day." Because
yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
But that's brilliant. I mean, especially if you're like, you're really pleased that you've progressed so much, and the stuff you put out before was really good and really strong. So people are going to be like, "Well, I can hear that he's better. It was still good back then."
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of always liked my harp playing. Really, I don't really have a problem with that. But yeah, it's my vocals have improved a lot, and the writing's improved. In the last couple of years, as I said, all I've really been working on in my downtime is vocals and writing. So, and outside of the kind of niche harmonica community, unless the vocals and the songs are good, it doesn't matter how good the harp is. I wouldn't want to listen to it if the vocal and the song was crap. Because that's essentially what it's about. The harp is just a bonus, or an element on top of that.
No, definitely. Like I think we all forget that it's there as everything else in the mixes is to service the music and to make the music better, but it's not the main feature.
Yeah,
it's quite weird because like I know that I don't listen to a ton of harmonica music. Like
right.
I love harmonica, I love playing it, and I have listened to a lot of harmonica music, but like I tend to listen to electronic music and like ambient stuff and dance stuff. And I feel like you probably don't listen to a lot of harmonica music either.
Not really anymore, no. But I grew up hearing a lot of blues, a lot of Muddy Waters, Sonny Boy Williamson in particular, John Lee Hooker and stuff like that, Alan Wolf. So it's always kind of been around me, and it's inspired me whether I wanted it to or not, But then in my sort of teenage years, I was into Well, I was a goth basically, so I was into Marilyn Manson and stuff like that. And the kind of new metal scene, Rage Against the Machine, bands like that. And with this new album that I'm working on, there's definitely some of that in there as well. You know, some of those kind of the sort of heavy minor pentatonic kind of riffs that Rage would do.
Nice.
Yeah, but there's always an element of blues in there as well. I don't think I'd ever be able to get away from that, really.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think
No.
like keeping blues music going is very cool. And there are some bands that are doing a really great job at doing new blues without it being a 12 bar.
Yeah,
like the Black Keys.
Black Keys, Rival Sons are one of my favorite bands at the moment.
Rival Sons are brilliant, and yeah, like all of that, and even like White Stripes, they kind of brought the blues back into people's conscience. I think when they came out, what was it, like 2000 or whatever, and yeah, it's not a 12-bar blues, but it gets people thinking about that language and about those scales and chords. So it's cool that you're still using that. You said that you're doing Rage style stuff. Are you going to do some Zach De La Rocha kind of hip hop type thing?
There's no hip hop or rap elements in this record.
Oh man, that's a shame.
I did rap on a record once though, on my Unleashed album. There's a song called "Blues Is My First Love" that does have a rap verse on it. But
are you proud of that rap verse? Do you want us to share it?
Oh man, yeah, you can share that if you want.
What's the song called?
It's called "Blues Is My First Love."
Blues. I'll check it out and I'll link it in the show notes. I just want to hear you rapping like that. That sounds awesome.
2010. But that album was quite eclectic. Some of it's straight blues, some of it's kind of soul, some of it's rock. You know, it was a bit all over the place.
That's cool. So I noticed that you were doing some live stream gigs during lockdown. Is that happening?
We have one tomorrow night. Just see if I can find the details for it. It's called the Lockdown Music Festival. It's the second episode because they did one last week, I think. So it's if you go to facebook.com/Lockdown Music Festival, we are playing at 9:20 p.m. It's just a short, like 20-minute set. But we did want to play with the full band and play the new material. Unfortunately, with the kind of most recent lockdown restrictions, we can't really do that, have four guys in a room. So it will just be me and Steve, our guitar player. We'll probably still play some of the new material, but just...
Are you going to sit 2 meters away from each other?
I don't really know, to be honest. I don't know if there's room for us to do that in our studio, but
that's fair. Yeah, this will be going out a couple of days after the Lockdown Music Festival, so hopefully there'll be some videos that I can link up in the show notes so people can watch it. Do you plan, like, are you going to do any more of that kind of online stuff? Like, if imagining we're locked down for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know about gigs, but I'll probably do something. Certainly, I'll be putting out some more YouTube tutorials, and I might do a sort of live Q&A type thing. I did one the other day, actually, just a spontaneous Q&A/jam session where I just turned the camera on and played over some tracks and took questions and things as I went. So
nice.
Yeah, I'll probably do more of that.
You should. I think I'm noticing that there's a ton more really cool content being pushed out by all of these creative people who are stuck inside and just need to be creative.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I've noticed everyone's a Skype teacher now as well.
Yeah. Are you taking students on at the moment?
I am still, yeah. I mean, I've been doing Skype lessons for quite a few years now. So yeah, I'm around a lot at the moment. If anyone wants to Skype with me,
nice. I will put your details in the show notes so people can get in touch. And I can really vouch for Will as a teacher. Please don't take this personally. But when I booked you to come and do the Edinburgh Harmonica workshop, I booked you for your rock star appeal and to be the kind of exciting harmonica player. And I didn't know that you were a great teacher. And then people started coming out of your first workshop and just coming up to me like, oh my God, Will Wilde is such a great teacher as well. It's like, awesome. He's got the whole package.
Well, teaching's been my sort of day job, as it were, or the thing that supports my career for like 10 years now. So yeah, I'm quite experienced in the teaching department.
No, Will's a great teacher, and if you want to get some Skype lessons, then he's definitely a good person to get in touch with. Cool. Is there anything else you want to promote before we wrap things up?
I don't think so. I mean, you can find all my tour dates on the website. That's willharmonicawilde.com. Yeah, the ones kind of later in the year should still be going ahead at this point. Anything that's up there, as it stands, is going ahead. You can find my wild tuned rock harmonicas on my website too, and CDs and T-shirts and things like that.
Very cool. Well, I'll link all that stuff up so people can get to it nice and easily. Yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. It's been good catching up. Joe, I really can't wait until I can just book you to come and do something in person. I'm so itchy to like do stuff with people outside. Right. So I'll be calling you to say, right, Edinburgh Harmonica Workshop in person as soon as we're out of lockdown.
The next one?
Oh, mate. So the next one was supposed to be in May, and I've just cancelled it yesterday. Because venues have cancelled and all the obvious reasons. But there will be one next year unless this turns into a very long pandemic. But I don't think it will. Cool, man. Right, I will let you get on with the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for this, and take it easy.
Thanks. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tomlin's Harmonica Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. Join me next Monday for the next episode. Happy harping!